Here we go. Ready? Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. I know times are crazy and hard, and I'm so happy to be able to give this give back to you and talk with some really special guests. And today is a super special one. You know her, well, you don't know her, but she is a producer, an executive producer, a consulting producer on shows like Prodigal Son, Station 19, Empire, Nashville, Revenge, Justified. I mean, so many shows. And we are going to welcome her right now and hear all about her life and how she started and how she got so much success. Please help me welcome the beautiful Wendy Calhoun. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
So happy to have you. And no one knows this, but I recently met you at one of my clients, Crystal Hunt's birthday party, and we just connected because you're so real and you're just a wonderful energy. And so I'm so happy to have connected with you. And I can't wait to hear all about you, about your life, how you started. Were you an actress first? Like, tell us everything you could possibly tell us, and I will shoot questions into you. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's funny that you say we connected. Every single time I've been on set and we've had professional coaches on set working with our actors, like it's an instant bond. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the teaching vibe that connects me or what, but I love what you do. So it doesn't surprise me that we connected that way. I did start off by performing, mostly doing public speaking. And then went to a performing arts high school where I studied drama and theater, and got really into playwriting when I was a sophomore in high school, and I had my first play produced, and that was kind of the thing. I was hooked on the writing side, but I was still performing. I would perform in improvs. I did improv competitions, and even to this day, I still will take improv when I have a chance to, in between, if I'm on a hiatus. You know, I'll sign up for classes, and I've done Groundlings, I've done UCB.
So incredible.
Yes. I recommend that to writers all the time. You know, you have to get out of your head and get your listening skills up to speed and just, go out there and do something that's scary, but like you have to be creative on your feet with improv. I think it's like great training, especially when you're in a writer's room, because that's what we're doing. We're improv, we're playing all those roles before they're ever on a page. Mm-hmm. So definitely that was part of my development. But so eventually I ended up at NYU and studied film and television. I was in theater the first year. I was at Playwrights Horizons. So there I was, writing, dramaturgy, directing, and then switched into film my sophomore year.
So you did film. Were you an actress too, or you just were mostly a writer?
Well, when I was in the film department at NYU, your undergrad, you're really taught to be a director, honestly. They hand you a camera and you go out and direct. I did have a manager at the time where I would do commercials, that sort of thing. So I do have a SAG card. That was always kind of like, I loved it. It was a fun thing, but it never felt like the full me. I don't know how to explain it. And I feel like performing is one of those things. If you're an actor, you know it, and you are able to bring your full self to it. And I feel like I just wasn't the true me. The true me was much more behind the camera.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because for years I did the unscripted work, for 7 years.
Oh, what shows? What shows?
Oh, okay, well, the last one that I did, this was a long time ago, but the last one I did was Hell's Kitchen. But before that, I did shows for, Discovery. I did like Monster Houses and VH1, 100 Greatest Dance.
Let me ask you about that, because there's some people listening that probably do want to go into the reality show too. So but we're going to get into the other shows you did and started writing on, but how did you fall into doing reality, and what is it like as a writer on a reality show? Are you writing scripted material? Are you just giving ideas? Is that where the improv comes in? How does that work?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. There was a couple of questions in there. So how did I get into it? It was a fluke. When I finished NYU, I didn't know anyone in Hollywood. I cold called anyone that was working in development, because at the time I thought, well, at least in development, I'll get to read a lot of scripts, maybe make some good connections, and see how it goes. So only one guy took my call and said, if you come out here, I'll meet with you. And he met with me when I moved to New York. When I moved from New York to LA. And then he introduced me to 3 of his friends. And within a month, I was an agent's assistant. So that
oh my gosh, I had no idea. That's crazy.
Yeah, right. It's like cold calling. It actually worked. So for 5 years, I was assistant. I assisted Tim Burton. I assisted Mark Burnett. I assisted, oh my gosh, I was at Sony Pictures and corporate communications. And eventually I landed at
from that one email. From that one email.
That's the whole the train starts, the domino effect. So eventually, I ended up at Village Roadshow Pictures, and I became a development executive. But while I was there, I kept normal people go to Hawaii for their 2 weeks of vacation. I would put up one of my plays. I would write a play and direct it, and that was what I would do for my fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. True artist.
So my bosses realized that. They knew that I was a writer, and they started giving me assignments where I would I was writing stuff on a table. I was doing all kinds of stuff. And then eventually they had a show that they had sold to Animal Planet, and they needed a head writer, and they asked me to do it, and I just did it. And then that led to 7 years of me in unscripted.
That's crazy. But wait, so let me ask you, so unscripted, what are you writing? Well, how do you do it? Do they really feel sort of scripted?
Yes. But it's different though. Okay. Yeah. So it's really, the writing of it happens in the outline stage, and you do outlines in unscripted, believe it or not, where you're basically coming up with the architecture of the story, kind of the setting you're going to put them in, it's all about casting too, right? So you kind of know what the cast is, and you kind of know their personalities, and you're thinking about what kind of situations you could put them in that will create drama. For example, if you watch a show like Hell's Kitchen, there's a formula to that show. I felt like we built it in season 2 while I was there, and I don't think it's ever changed. There's a first challenge. There's going to be rewards for the winners and punishments for the losers. There's going to be blowback of that when they get together. So there's all these little steps. And so that stuff you can kind of plan out. What you don't write is the quote unquote script, right? Because you don't know. Right. Although I will say, we constantly, we meaning the producers on those kinds of shows, especially a big one like Hell's Kitchen, we would be in the master control room. We had 72 cameras on that show. Wow. All outfitted everywhere, 6 Steadicams. And there would be whiteboards all around us. And as stuff is happening, we, the producers, would write notes up so that it basically Gordon could be any place at any time, because we were his eyes and ears looking for the story. And we would feed that information to Gordon. Hey, you know what? Rachel had a fight with so-and-so back in the dorms. Check in on her, that kind of stuff.
That is great. That's hard though. That's hard that he could grab onto that too. That's a talent in itself.
It was I loved it. I love it. But here's the part that's really, really fun. When you talk about performers. Yeah. So when I started directing on that side, you really are, you're performing, but you're just not seen. I'm literally standing, a lot of times, if I'm in a confessional, it'll be kind of like this. They'll see me this way, and they'll be in a sequestered room where we're having a conversation that's recorded. Right. But if I'm on the set and I'm moving around set, I'm right next to the camera and I'm asking questions, right? And my facial expressions is playing with theirs. I'm leading them down certain roads for the story I know I want to tell. You are acting. Yeah. It's improv.
Well, yeah, that's amazing. That's so amazing. I find it fascinating because I don't know that reality world at all, but I know a lot goes into it, more than people, think. And it's pretty technical, and it's pretty, I imagine the editing of these are just insane.
That's the next process. That's where the real writing takes place, is you kind of know, like I said, at the beginning, you build the tempo, you know kind of the story things you need, that you're going to at least get some drama. Then you try to really amp it up when you're in production, and then you go back in the editing, and you're just very carefully, piece by piece, thousands of hours of footage. It takes months, and you put that thing together where you take something that actually is so unreal, if you really think about it, and you make it super real. It's like, it's super,
Yeah,
I can't explain
so
it. It's fun.
cool. Yeah, no, that seems like you
Yeah.
really loved it though. But let's get on to the juicy, to the real acting shows, because most people are listening that, I mean, not to say, well, reality isn't real acting shows to me, because I'm an acting coach and I
It's different.
actually, only really do want to talk about the real shows because the writing and the characters and people auditioning and how you feel when people audition and when they walk into the room and that artistry that people study for years, in their craft to get on these shows. So that's really what I want to make my focus. But I
Yeah.
don't knock any of it. My old friend of mine from my old acting class in my 20s, she married this guy who was I think he was the production assistant on Bachelor. He's the
Mhm.
executive producer now. Worked his way up. He's the
Yeah.
executive. And you know what? They're having a ball. So,
Yeah, of
each
course.
whatever. But I want to talk about the acting stuff. So
Sure.
you started, so after this, it parlayed you. How did you get your first writing job? And here's my other question. Did you watch shows to understand the storylines? Did you just create your own scripts that you submitted? What was the
Mhm.
process for you? Because the people listening would like to know for their own challenge.
Sure. And it's an interesting thing because I think it changes. As the industry evolves, the process is always evolving. So
Mhm.
I'll say this, but it's my experience, and no, there won't there won't be any two experiences that are
Sure.
the same. But basically, I did reality or unscripted for 7 years.
Mhm.
2 years into that process, it it dawned on me pretty hard where I was just thinking, okay, you love to write this fiction, the plays, the dramas.
Mhm.
Um, and at that point, up until that point, I kept having reps come to my place and be like, you should write television. And I was always kind of like, I don't even watch television. And at the time, I really didn't watch that much
Yeah.
television. And um, and it was so interesting because um, a show came out. It was called 6 Feet Under, and it
Oh,
was on HBO.
Freddie Rodriguez. I coach Freddie on so many things
Okay,
on that show.
so
Yeah.
I saw 6 Feet Under, and I was like, "Oh, if that's television, okay, yeah, I can write that. I want to write that." So,
Yeah.
so
That
I
was
wrote
a great
the first.
show.
Yeah, the first spec I wrote was 6 Feet Under because it was the first show I saw where I was like, "Oh, okay, if that's what it can be, then I want to be a part of that." So that was the first spec. At that time, you could still write a spec and really get a lot of doors open. I think a spec is more important if you want to show you can do procedural. So be that the cop, the lawyer, uh, and the hospital show, which are always, by the way, I tell new writers this all the time. Pick one of those because you will always find work if you can do one of those.
Really?
Don't-
Let me just interject a question because
Yeah.
back in the day, so you did a spec script for a show that's on the air. Now these days, I hear from other people, other writer friends, and I know that it's not about a show that's on, it's your own voice. Do you agree on that?
Yes, that I think that is true today. I mean, let's just put it this way: the original is more important now than the spec ever. But I still think that there's some places where they're gonna want to. I just feel like as a writer, you should have a toolbox. You know what I
I
mean?
agree with
You have
you.
a
I
lot
think,
of original,
yeah, yeah.
right? That
Hmm.
reflects you.
Hmm.
And also if you want to write about dinosaurs and you're not a dinosaur, it's fine too. Like not every one of my scripts is about, a Black woman who likes Story Yellow. So it's okay to not have to have all of your art be identity art, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yes.
But
But as a young writer starting, what would
yeah,
you say to write? One type of a procedural that's on and then your own thing as well?
yeah. And if you want to, the thing that's valuable about that spec process, even though maybe it's not necessarily the sales tool that it used to be, is
Mhm.
that you learned about the math of television. It's a very particular type of math. You see how many pages are in an act
Mhm.
just by trying to replicate what that writer is doing each week
Mhm.
on that show. I
Mhm.
think there's still value in writing a spec, even if it's only for you as a
Mhm.
tool to learn, because
Mhm.
you start to have a new understanding of how much economy these scripts actually have. They're very economical when you break them down.
But
Um,
and it's very specific. Each genre is so different from each other.
Mm-hmm. So for the writer, I would say again, I highly recommend this. It's like stocking the kitchen cabinet. The bread, the eggs, and the milk of television.
Mm,
Cops, lawyers, doctors. Pick one of those three and do some work in there. So it doesn't have to. I'm not saying go home and write, a spec of the good, I don't know, the good doctor, whatever. I'm saying maybe figure out a character that fits into one of those worlds and
mm,
maybe write an original there. It's
mm.
going to get you work. And then beyond
That's incredible advice. That is incredible advice because every show has one of those as the
I
job.
waste yeah, I wasted so many years, Shari. I was writing, first of all, one of my problems is I can write a lot of things, but that means that like I was pretty good at a lot of things, but
Mm,
not great at any one thing. Does that make sense? So like I had to like really become an expert at something, and I chose law. I chose law enforcement. I'm writing a cop show, right? Prodigal Son is a cop show. It's a quasi cop show. So it's still
So
paying me off to this
how
day.
did you, yeah, how did you do that? So you woke up one day and you were like, okay, I'm going to just hone in on one thing I'm really good at. Why did you pick that? What was
I,
why?
this is fun. Okay,
Yeah,
so
exactly. But wait, let me just say, because when you're breaking down scripts as characters and actors, I always tell my students, there's always one life-changing moment that's happened in that character's life that has led them to where they are today. Same thing for writers, same thing for all jobs. There's some life-changing thing that has happened that geared you towards that. What is it?
was Tammy Klein. Okay, I was making a show called Ballroom Boot Camp.
Okay.
TLC. It came out the same year as Dancing with the Stars. The
Oh.
difference was we followed every day. We called them Joes and Janes, and we taught them how to ballroom dance, and then we took them to ballroom dance competitions, and they competed,
Oh.
and it was
Oh.
super fun.
I love.
So one of the persons that I was producing and directing was this woman named Tammy Klein. She was a real life CSI. She worked with the sheriff's department. By the way, now she's an actress, but at the
No way.
yes,
That's
and she's
crazy.
excellent. But at
That's
the
great.
time, and we still keep in touch. At the time, she was, doing that. So I'm following her around with a camera. I'm getting to know her life. I'm getting to meet some of her friends that are detectives, and I really I'm fascinated by them, by everything that they do. And so when it dawned on me that that these characters were really interesting to me and complex, I started writing in that arena and then just really never looked back. So
Yeah.
it's Tammy Klein. I'm going to give her all the credit.
Yeah.
She showed me she's a
Give her a
real
shout
life
out on
character.
that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So let me ask you, what kind of advice would you give young writers right now to get started? I know we're in, seclusion right now, but there is things you could be writing every day, but what would you tell them to do right now? I mean, there's so much access, and I always tell my actors to be courteously aggressive and get out there. Writers too. So you took that email years back and you were like, gutsy, and you didn't want anything to stop you, the belief in yourself. So what would you, yeah, go ahead. I could talk forever. So what would you say?
No. I mean, I think, wow. I mean, it's interesting. I did have a conversation about this recently. I think one of the things that we could be doing very, very clearly is the journaling process as writers. And that journal doesn't necessarily have to be, a pen and paper. It could be a video journal. It could be, a blog, whatever you want to do, but just start jotting down some of the emotions that we're all processing right now, because this is a very specific moment in time. I think we'll all look back and know life before 2020 and life after 2020.
Yeah.
So it's really important to like try to tap into the right now of the emotions of what we're going through right now, and document that, because it's going to inform our stories moving forward, and also it's going to inform the nostalgia we may have when we want to look back. So that's one thing I'm telling young writers. Another thing for writers, I think now is the perfect time to, if you've got some stuff in the drawer, clean it up, and you can put together these kinds of chats with performers who maybe are at home right now, and have a reading and hear your stuff brought to life. Those are hugely informative development process, and I don't think enough writers really try to take advantage of. Put your work on its feet. And if you don't have the work yet, then get some work to put on its feet. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be more than, honestly, I haven't told too many people this, but I'll tell your guys, because you
Great, yay, yay.
So people come to me all the time, well, should I write a pilot or a screenplay, or what should that original thing be? The things that have gotten doors open for me have been short films. So that's less than 30 pages. Short stories do really well. Those have done very well for me. I think that was less than 10 pages. Because what happens is these one-act plays. Development executives get tons of pilots. Pilots are the hardest thing you're ever gonna have to write. Don't even bother. They get tons of pilots. They get tons of screenplays. They don't get enough of the short stuff. And that's actually, if they see your script and it's the shorter one on the pilot, they're more likely to read it first.
Yeah.
Well, this now it's like this, right? They're more, they can just get through it.
Okay.
So thinking in short form.
So now when they do that though, so say they've got a short story or short form something, or even a pilot script, what do they do? Do they just start emailing it to look up every single agent and manager? What's the process?
My feeling is, well, first of all, right now, it will be a year next week that there's been a dispute between the talent agencies and the writers.
Yes.
So that already means this is a really weird time to be reaching out to management. I mean, I always feel like that's a bit of a weird step. I didn't get my first agent until I had that job.
Okay, so what else could they do besides that step? Because I'm just asking, because I know the acting world. I don't really know the writing world as much on the process, because I'm all about, pushing your career forward and putting it into your life.
I think right now it's a matter of taking advantage of the tools we have in front of us. So, we literally can right now, I could write a monologue. I could, if I didn't want to perform it myself, I could give it to someone else. If it's fantastic and amazing, I can, post that all over the place, every social media channel you can think of. If it starts to get hits and generate interest, the reps will call you. You don't need to call them. And that's
okay, I love that. Yeah, so YouTube and on your Instagram and every single venue, but make sure it's freaking good. But I think, honestly, if it is really good, it will get that notice.
Absolutely. That's the whole thing. The cream rises to the top. And why would you want to run around and try to find people to give 10% of your money away to anyway? Let them come to you and earn that money. That's how I feel about it.
I love it. So let me ask you something about being on Prodigal Son. That's still going, yes?
Well, yeah, we're hoping for a season 2. We don't know officially yet.
Okay, so if it gets picked up, or in last season, so you're writing on the show, were you part of the auditioning when actors came into audition? Were you in the room? Were you part of watching actors' tapes?
I was. I definitely was. The episode that I wrote, which was the 4th episode, and I also produced the 5th episode, and then I went back for the 13th episode, and I was in testing.
So let me ask you a couple questions about when actors come in. Mm-hmm. What is that little element that you like or you feel is the closing deal for them? Is it the way they walk in and leave? Is it the way they laugh if they bobble up on their lines? Is it their self-confidence, their ability to tell a story? What is it for you when actors come in? Because it's an all-day event, and it's probably it can be very draining too.
Yeah. The thing for me is when an actor can take a piece of direction and make an incredible adjustment right then and there. Even if that actor is not all 100% there yet for me, for that character, if I see that they can make that adjustment and they've gotten themselves 10%, 15%, 20%, sometimes they nail it with the adjustment, I'm like, yeah, we want that person. Because so much of being on set is adjustments. It's just one adjustment after another, whether it's a change in the blocking or things that we don't have any control over sometimes. So the actor that is going to be flustered by that, or that can't change from what they've already rehearsed and can't be flexible beyond that, I'm less interested in. Even if they might be like perfect for the role, I'm less interested in, because I need to know that you can get through the fire.
Yeah, and they have to be so malleable. In all my classes, I'm just going to interject, the main thing in my class is taking the adjustment, whether they agree with my adjustment or not. Just freaking take it, because if you can be malleable and be moldable, then you're gonna get hired. That's exactly my philosophy. I'm so glad that you said that. And
Yeah.
but for you, in the first place, to work with an actor, they have to be confident, obviously, in their choices, right? So do you ever have actors that come in that you feel start off confident and then they wither away because nerves kick in? And do you help guide them, or what happens then?
Um, there's been some times when I've seen actors come in and maybe sometimes this is what happens. They'll do the reading and they'll burst into tears or something. They'll tap into some emotion that takes them in a weird way out of the role because they've fallen so deeply maybe into it. I don't know, or so pushing so hard to get a performance. And then they really have a tough time recovering. It's like they went so far out that first round that they fall apart. And usually the best thing I find is to just have them say, you know what, take a breath, go out, get some water, go to the bathroom, just take a breath, get recentered, and then come back in. Let's do it again.
So you don't mind if they just say, okay, I need a second, I'm going to go out for a second, take somebody else in and come back? You're cool with that?
No, if somebody's having a really hard time, no. Auditions are just so weird though, aren't they?
They are. They're so weird. So it's a nerve-wracking thing for actors. It's nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And by the way, I've seen auditions from people who are, no joke today, A-list stars in gigantic movies. And when I watched their audition for shows, I thought they weren't very good. But then they would get the part. And a lot of times those people, I'll tell you why they get the part. Your performer should know this. I listen to the cast members of our show. If a cast member of our show, someone I have respect for, I'm working with every day, comes to me and says, hey, so-and-so read for that role, I promise you they have it. They're amazing. I listen to that. And I'll often take that into deep consideration. So there was a performer, I'm not going to say his name, but he did not do a very good job in his audition. Another performer on our show came to me and said exactly that. We gave him the part. He was amazing. Right now, he's in billion-dollar movies. So what do I know?
See, the thing is, because it's not the best actor that gets the job. You know what I mean? He happened to have that connection to get that job. Because there's so many actors that I work with that are such brilliant, brilliant actors. And then you go into an audition, you fall apart because of that people-pleasing thing. Because you want to do good. You just want everyone to like you. And I tell actors, if you can just go and tell the story, make your choices, and then leave, you're gold. And if you can just not care what anyone thinks about you, that's which is the only thing I could do.
If I had another piece of advice, something that stands out for me is I love it when actors talk about making a choice, when they're very clear on playing what that character wants. We spend so much time in writing to get to the essence of what the character wants in the scene. And when an actor gets on that track and they start to really embody that, not just in saying the lines, delivering the lines, but also their body, everything about them, they're living, feeding it, the want. It elevates
the drive. And it keeps the drive and it keeps the pacing. And it doesn't make it self-indulgent about themselves.
Oh my gosh, I'll tell you, and I made a list of all of my favorite actors for you that I've worked with. But one, I gotta give a shout out to one right now. Damian Lewis. I worked on a show called Life. It was ran for 2 seasons on NBC. Damian was a star. I felt like it was Christmas Day when I was working with Damian. Like, I didn't know what present was gonna pop out of the box, but I knew it was gonna be brilliant. And I knew he was gonna take my writing and he was gonna bring to it something I possibly didn't even imagine and take it to the next level. Oh my God. When a performer is doing that, it's magical. But so much of it was about him. He would commit to the want. He would commit to it in this way that just never looked back. It was so cool.
That's such a great piece of advice, because it is how you're going to go about getting what you want. And so those tactics that you put into the scene really can make it so magical. But it's about layering too. And this guy is obviously a really layered actor, because you have to take the words that you wrote And then it has to seem that the person saying them wrote them.
Yeah. That's part of that whole, what I guess I'm trying to articulate about committing to the want. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like the want is outside of him. It feels like so organic to him, so organic that like I, who wrote the want, I'm watching it going, wait a minute, I didn't know that was the want, but I love it. You know, it's his own interpretation of the want.
Tell us other actors who you love.
Oh, more actors I love? Oh my God.
You don't have to. We don't have to talk about that.
You know, okay, I got to work with Taraji and Terrence for like 7 or 8 episodes of the first season of Empire. I mean, that was amazing. Terrence Howard.
He seems like an amazing person.
There's like a Brando quality, I feel like, to him. Like, and I would watch him. I would see the moment when Terrence was gone and Lucius was there.
Yeah.
Like, literally the click over moment. I'm like, oh, I'm watching Lucius now.
I love how you just said the click over moment. Because when actors drop in, that's that click over. I'm stealing that from you.
When you see it, you know it. And, you know, I'm watching in the Video Village, you know, for hours, these scenes. And when I see it, it's like, oh, I lean in. And that's the other thing I do want to say about one last thing I was going to say about the unscripted.
Yes.
What unscripted taught me is, for 7 years, I got really used to seeing people be real on camera. Mm-hmm. And I have a nose for that. And so I think sometimes the people who haven't really had the opportunity maybe to just be themselves a lot are always sort of lost in the characters. Like, sometimes they forget, you know, when we're real, we are different. I don't know how else to put it. There's like a gloss. And a lot of times on the shows I'm working on, I think one of the special things I do is when I see too much of that gloss, I start to strip it away till we can get it to be more real. And
How do you do that? What do you do? What do you do?
To strip it away?
Yes, please. Tell us your secret. Punch them in the face and say, stop it.
People pay me for this. Okay, now. Let's see. What do I do?
Connect to them and just talk about the story and just stay open up, relax.
I remember with Taraji, she would get to the end of the take and she would kind of just give me that look, and I would be like, she'd be like, I know I can blow the roof off this place. I'm like, I know you can't, Taraji, but please bring it down. Like, because like nobody's really ever like that. Even if you're cooking, you're never that big.
The camera picks up all the little pieces and it makes it so much better.
Yeah. I love to tell people this. It's true. I don't think he'll be upset with me, but Lee Daniels I've only actually heard him give really 2 pieces of direction. Cut it in half and throw it away. Cut it in half, meaning, you know, a lot of times actors will like milk and add time. Mm-hmm. Cut it in half, the timing, and throw it away. Is like, a lot of times they get so invested in the words. No, actually the words should just be thrown away. Just, you know.
I agree 100%. The words thrown away, but the internal life full. And so when actors really, really work the material, that's what happens. Your inner life is so full, you're just living the life and you're just throwing away those words. But they're not. It's tricky when you say to actors to throw it away and then they get lost. What do you mean? Does it have meaning? What are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? So throwing it away with a lot of layers underneath. You agree?
We had a lot of performers on Empire season 1 who had never done any type of performance before. And there was a young woman that was discovered. She played Portia, who was Cookie's assistant. And she was amazing, so funny, really great rapper, but she didn't understand. So I remember watching some dailies that just killed me because Lee told her to cut it in half, and so the next take she only said half the line.
Oh, that's so
and he just he starts yelling at her, and she goes, "You said to cut it in half."
Oh, that's brilliant. That's so adorable. I love it.
It was funny. Anyway, I loved it.
Oh, that's so amazing. That's so amazing. All right. Well, listen, I think I asked you all the things. What would you give advice on staying on a positive track? because there's so much rejection in this business, that what can you offer? What can you offer to writers listening, and all my actors and all the people that are listening? Actors are now writers. Everyone is using every medium to
Yeah.
express, and it's really important too.
Yeah, I know for me, there's things that I do. I practice meditation. That's one, just to quiet and like accept that this is now, and tell myself this is all there is. Right now, enjoy this.
Yes.
And if I'm writing in this moment, then I'm a writer, I'm getting ready to do a live stream, well, that's just really cool for me. I enjoy that. I think there's a quote that keeps rumbling around my head, and so that's the advice I'll give. It's from Winston Churchill. I got to go to that museum in London. I really loved it this summer. But the Churchill quote is something along the lines of success is only temporary, failure is not fatal, and the most important thing is courage. And I feel like right now, I'm paraphrasing Churchill, not very well.
Yeah,
but the most important thing right now is courage. It's not about whether you're having success or failure. And I don't even know that you can measure during the time of a pandemic of anything as being a success or a failure. I do think it's all about courage. So having the courage to, write a great scene today, having the courage to, perform something and put it out into the universe to share it with the world. Like that to me is the advice I would give, is that courage, and if you think about it, from a lot of the big moments in my career have come out of some strange, deep courage, or maybe insanity. I don't know. But like cold call people, have only one dude say he'll meet with you and move across the country. Like to become the head writer of a show after just being a development executive and just being like, okay, sure. There's been a lot of times, and I'll give you another perfect example, actually, for me. I had to quit Nashville before I had an offer on Empire.
Okay, so let's back up. You were a writer on Nashville.
I was a writer on Nashville and a producer on Nashville, and it was a great gig, and I loved it.
Yes.
And we were in the second season, and I used to go into the Nashville room and I would make jokes. I would pretend to be the Black version of the show.
Sorry, that made me laugh. I just got a visual.
So basically, I was doing Empire for 2 years before Empire ever existed.
Right.
And so somebody sent me the pilot script of Empire, and I read it, and they had only cast Terrence, they cast Taraji, and that was it at that point. And I think they had just gotten Timbaland for the music. And I read it, and I was like, I have to do this. I have to do the show. And I called my agent from Nashville. I'm on set. I'm like, I'm doing the show. And he's like, it's not even a show. It's a pilot script. It just got picked up, hasn't even shot. What are you talking about? You have a great job. I'm like, okay, doing the show. So anyways, we get further and further down the track. I start meeting with Fox. I'm like, I'm convinced I got to do this show. There was another reason too. I at this point, I had worked on, at that point, I think by 6 series, and I'd never done a Black show. And I was like, damn, can I write some Black people? It might be fun for me.
Yeah. Can I just back up? Can I ask you this question? So you were on the show, and I kind of wouldn't mind talking about a day in the life on a writing show and how on all those hours you have to put in. But so then you got this, and then so talk about the writing of those hours, and then so you got the script, and then what's that process? What are the steps of the people that you have to meet to further it along?
To get a job?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a lot. Okay, so let me see. I'll try to remember on that one, because that one was so scary. It was an interesting year too, because that was the same year that I think How to Get Away with Murder was also a pilot that year. I'm going to say something else that had a Black lead. It was an interesting year in broadcast because finally there were some Black leads. Like it was like, oh, we exist.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So maybe I will have a chance to write something beyond white men with guns. So let's see, the first meeting, it's the generals that start. So you have the general meeting with studio, you have the general meeting with network, and those are kind of the first rounds. And to be honest, like for this year's staffing season, I mean, this year I don't even know what we're in this year, but
Right.
if this was a normal year,
Yeah, the normal
those
year.
meetings have already happened. They would have happened they started as early as December. And I'm only talking about broadcast for a second. I'll do streaming, it's totally different. But like for broadcast, they start in like November, December, January, February. People are having general meetings. And what's happening is if the executives, the studio executives and the network executives like your writing, they call you in, you have a general meeting, they get to know you, where you're from,
or your essence, your truth, who you are.
Exactly. Probably similar to if you're an actor having a general meeting. And then they make their lists. And what happens is the pilots get picked up. And right after those pilots get picked up, and it's not too long after they get cast, the process actually already starts where those lists are being sent to the showrunners. And very often, or the creators of the show, very often what's happening is those showrunners have assistants or other people who work with them that are now starting to read all of that material. The studio sends them everybody on their list. Hey, here are all the PDFs for everybody I think would be great for your show.
Okay.
And those, and then they decide who they would like to set meetings with. And then you go through the meeting process.
Based on your writing, that they like the material, that your voice matches the essence of their show. Yes.
Yeah. And also it's important to them that the network and the studio have already signed off on you.
Yeah.
Because another thing that happens too is after a showrunner has worked with you as a writer, very often you get to skip a lot of those first steps, or it's a little bit backwards. For example, Graham Yost had already worked with me on a show called Reigns. When he had cast Timothy Oliphant in Justified, he called me up and he said, we're making this pilot. If it goes, I really would like for you to come be on the show. But we had already worked together before. But I still had to go through the process of meeting the FX execs. I still had to, have the meeting. But he was already a champion, and that was helpful. Because I don't know that I would have been on their radar had it not been for him.
I got you, yeah.
Because I wasn't on the regular FX rotation.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, that's kind of the process. And so finally you have the showrunner meeting, and pretty much that's the last meeting you'll have. After that meeting, they start to make offers.
They make offers, but just quickly say the levels. So it starts as like a staff writer, not where you are now, but when they begin.
Yeah, all writers start as staff writers.
They're staff writers. But can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
Before that, do you think it's worthy of their time to become like a writer's room assistant? Do people really move up from these production assistant jobs? Or do you think it's better to try to just get staffed on a show? What is your take on that?
My take on that. Well, I didn't do that. I wasn't ever a writer's assistant. I mean, I was a Hollywood assistant, but always to executives or directors or producers or development people. Right. So my take on it is that, and I'm sure you've heard this already, there's a lot of talk about it, especially this past year. Those writer's assistants jobs don't pay very much money. They certainly don't pay the cost of living in Los Angeles. And the problem is, yes, for some people, it's a track to getting into that staff writing job, but it's really hard still. Yeah. So you're basically living at a minimum wage or below a minimum wage, really, once you add up the hours. And this can go on for years.
Yeah.
And some people just can't do it, and I actually feel like it's one of the reasons that a lot of women and people of color don't get into those ground level jobs in Hollywood, because a lot of times we're caretakers, we're providers. We can't afford, and we don't have the luxury of someone who's paying for our car, paying for our phone, putting a roof over our head, putting food on the table. A lot of times, people don't have that, and they need the job to give them that. They need health insurance, So, anyways.
Because I think a lot of people get stuck in thinking that that's where they have to start in order to have any potential, but I don't necessarily agree with that.
No, it isn't, because we have a staff writer that's on Prodigal this past year who she was a musician, and she wrote a pilot that got a lot of attention, and so that pilot got optioned, I believe, and so that because of that, she started to have all those general meetings. People really liked her writing, her work, and then she got a staff writing job. So like me, I never was a writer's assistant. But a lot of people do. I mean, I say this, but I also want to say, yes, there are a lot of people who are able to get the staff writing assistant and then get a staff job. But I think a lot of people don't realize that it can take years. Yeah. It's not going to happen in 1 year. Some people think, well, I'm going to be a writer's assistant for like a year or 2 years. I can tough it out that much. I've known some that have gone 5 years, 7 years. Yeah. And I'm telling you, they get better.
I don't blame them for getting better. Okay, let's cut from that. So writer's assistant. So then you get a staff writer job. What the title? And then what's the next one? Co-producer or what is it?
No. That's staff writer, story editor, executive story editor, co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, consulting producer, executive producer. And by the way, some of those levels you may have to do several times.
Wow. It's so fascinating. It's just so fascinating. And it's different amounts of money and different amounts of power on, in the room, I guess. Yes.
Well, it's interesting. It's funny because once you get into the room,
you're in it.
It's a team sport.
Yeah.
So it's not like just because you may have an upper level, for lack of a better word, rank.
Right.
That doesn't mean that your ideas are any better or worse than anyone else. So everybody kind of plays together, and it's a kind of a level playing field. If you have a good room, it is. Some rooms there's some power struggles and ego bull crap, but when it's a good creative room, everybody's contributing and everybody's involved. The difference is the pay. I don't know if people know this, but like that staff writing job, you don't get paid for your scripts. So you get a weekly salary, but you don't get on top of that a script fee. You do get residuals if you're lucky enough to get residuals, but you don't get a script fee. So a lot of times, staff writers, wow. You know what I mean? You're doing a lot of work.
You have to believe in it so much. You have to be so passionate. And I always talk about passion and purpose. And, so for artists, your passion is the artistry, but what is your higher purpose? What's your message? And I think probably as writers too, because you have a message to give to the world through your writing. So you love the writing, but the purpose is bigger. And I always like actors to stay in that mindset, or any artist to stay in that mindset, because it takes you out of yourself and into giving. And I think it's at the end of the day, it's all about the give.
I know I'm on the right show when I walk away every day and I'm like, I can't believe they pay me to do this.
Yes! Like, I love it.
Yeah. I'm working on a piece and I can't believe anyone's actually paid me to do this. Like that's when I know I'm in the right place. I'm in the zone.
Yeah, you're in the zone. So let's close out. Thank you so much for coming. And let's just reiterate 3 things. Get on YouTube. Keep writing. What are you going to say? 3 things. If anyone just tunes into the end.
I'm a writer. I actually wrote this down. Wait a second.
You're pretty organized. I'm like, the artist, so I just rip. But I understand. You wrote it.
I wanted to be thoughtful. And I don't know now why my iPad's not booting up. Hang on a second. Okay. Yes.
Yay.
And then actually I kept coming up with like 4.
Give us 4.
So, my 3 positive pieces of advice. So the first one is to give 5-star customer service. This is a service industry. So that means the pleasant attitude, the being on time, it's being generous to the cast and crew, it's super respectful. It's I say this to the writers that are having their first time on set, and I'll say this to the performers because I think it applies to everybody really. Just imagine yourself as the best concierge ever. You know what I mean? Like you are there. So that's one. Okay. This one's really practical. For performers, as a producer who's worked with a lot of performers, please check your script the night before against your call sheet and make sure you're working off the right draft. And then also make sure you read the whole script, not just your parts, not just your scenes. You read the whole script so you know A to B, so that when there's something you don't understand, the minute you get on that set and you're in rehearsal, you can ask questions. You know, we're there for you to provide. Our service is to provide you with answers, because we've spent months on this script that you probably just got. And it's already gone through so many layers, and we understand why it is the way it is. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's one thing that could be helpful. And then physicality, you know, it's mind and it's body and it's spirit. It's all three. So don't forget the body. I feel like sometimes there's some performers who are not attached to what's happening to them physically. And so it's so much part of the story. It's part of the story we can't put on the page. And it fills the white of the page, I say. And that's something we really look to our performers. Bring us all three.
Three-dimensional life of that character.
Yeah. Totally. Oh my gosh. I'm looking at my list of people I love that I work with. I have to read it. I just want to give them a shout out. Yes. Maybe they're your students. I don't know. So Walton Goggins, amazing. Margot Martindale, amazing. Hayden Panettiere, amazing. Hayden, come back, Hayden. I love you. Madeline Stowe, amazing. Jana Lee Ortiz, amazing. Tom Payne is so good. Michael Sheen, like magical. Yes. Bellamy Young is also great. And my new fave, I have a fave right now. It's Halston Sage. Sorry. Halston plays Ainsley on Prodigal Son. And please watch the season finale because she is amazing.
Oh, I love the shout outs. People love to be acknowledged. And now it's my time to acknowledge you. Thank you so much for spending almost an hour with us, me talking, and you're so damn adorable. And I'm so happy I met you at Crystal's party, and continued success. And thank you so much. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Stay courteously aggressive, stay strong, stay at home, stay healthy. We're going to get through this.